Hey, in this series, I'm going to start calling deal breakdown. We're going to go through each deal we do with the client and the hurdles we had to overcome to help that client either sell their home or purchase a new home. And this one has to deal with John and Julie. So I've dealt with John and Julie for the last year and a half. They've been great clients of mine. Love talking with them and working with them. And they were actually investors coming from California. So what they were doing was selling their assets to California because it's a terrible area for landlords and investors, and moving their assets to Ohio where they could sell one home in California, buy two homes in Ohio, and double their rent and have a lot better landlord-friendly rules. So I've been helping them throughout the years and everything, and they just sold one of their properties out in California and had the funds to buy one here in Ohio again. So great, hey, we love it. They like buying homes that are already fixed up. They're not trying to get it cheap or anything. They just want to take one asset, move it over here. So it's kind of like their broker, like managing stocks in a way, and getting a better return for them. Well, we got it. We found a home. We got it under contract. It was a 1031 deal. The one thing we have to know is the 1031 is actually in Julie's name, not John's. So anytime we did it, all the deals had to be in Julie's name. 1031, it's probably for another video. It's just a way you can take, sell an asset over here. You can buy other properties over here, and you're delaying the taxes. The whole point of 1031 is you delay paying taxes. So instead of paying 30-40% in taxes on each sale of a property, you can take that income that you would spend on taxes and use it to buy more properties. You just have to be cognizant at some point those taxes come due, unless you just hang on to the properties and keep pushing it up and up in value until you die, and then you don't pay any taxes on it, and your kids or whoever you give the property to, you pay no taxes on. Well, this was in Julie's name, and sadly, unexpectedly, I called John one day. I'm like, hey, just want to see where we're at and how you guys are doing this deal. He's like, hey, I'm actually in a hospital. Fell down, hit her head. Ended up, she had like a brain aneurysm, and she passed away. We're in the middle of this deal. They just moved from California fully just a couple months ago. They bought a house here and we're slowly transitioning over. It's really sad, super unexpected. So she's in a hospital, she passed away, and John's like, hey, I still want to do this deal. I was like, okay. The situation we had to deal with though was she just passed, so John has to deal with that. The 1031's in her name, so I'm in a super gray area. Usually real estate's pretty black and white, but the 1031 made a gray area because it's all in Julie's name. So technically the property's in Julie's name. I'm like, okay, it's probably going to get transferred to John. I talked to the other agent. He's cool because the seller's still trying to find a house to buy. John's in no hurry, and Julie at that time, they were in no hurry. So we're trying to work this all out. So we just transferred over John's name and sent a deal forward, and I get an attorney over to John. So I helped John use an attorney, a real estate attorney, and he's like, hey, technically that deal's still in Julie's name. I was like, what do you mean she passed away? He's like, well, the estate of the 1031 owns that deal, so the deal's not dissolved or over. So in real estate, typically if someone passes away, you think the deal ends. No, the estate still has the opportunity to continue the purchase of that property. My mind was blown with this. I had no idea that was a thing. So our attorney was like, we'll call him Andy, was like, hey, no, keep it in that name. So we had to revert the contract back from Julie to John, John back. Now, long story short, is it a trust, right, for Julie? So now the deal's in the trust, automatically transfers to trust. So I had to connect the 1031 company with the real estate attorney, and both of them never had the situation where the owner of the 1031 passed away during the middle of the transaction. So we had to go through this whole thing and be like, hey, what do we do? End up being the attorney and the 1031 had to say, hey, we can pass this on to John, right? Then the attorney had to take it to state, quick probate, they had to type up, say, hey, none of the descendants or trustees, wherever you want to put it, want to lay claims to this deal, and John can be the estate, the trustee of the estate, and continue the deal forward. We had it all sign off. Of course, you take it to court, it's government, they take forever to get the deal done. Meanwhile, the seller gets their house, they find a house they want to get under contract, they're under contract with. So we have multiple dominoes of closing dates, right? If I go back, my buyer's buying this house, the seller is buying a house, and the seller of that house is buying a house. So we need all these dates to line up and hit fund. And ultimately, obviously, the deal got delayed like a week or two because of the courts. The one lady was out, and the judge, they're trying to push it through the courts because they knew, you know, it's all together. And the two sons of John and Julie signed off saying like, hey, we don't want claim to it, we don't care, because they're part of the whole family, obviously. Luckily, they had a good, healthy family. We eventually got this whole thing pushed through, but it was something that we never had to run into before. door with, because no one expects someone to pass away during a deal. And that does happen, believe me, before closings. We've had things happen, the seller or the buyer. What really complicated this was being a 1031, and now they're a 1031 company, which is really going out of California. So if you need a reference for 1031, I can give you one. Nor the real estate attorney over here, who's pretty well experienced, have ever dealt with something like this. Someone passed away in the middle of a transaction and they had the 1031 in their name. So we ultimately got this closed. We ultimately got this in John's name, who was able to fund the deal. We were able to get the seller to their property and the seller of that property buy their property. But these are just one of the many things you run into when you're buying or selling real estate. And this was a learning experience for everyone. John's doing good, obviously, but we're able to buy this house because they're building up this rental portfolio here in Ohio that he's going to leverage his kids with and help his kids with and doing that. So all in all, this was a crazy deal, going from a normal 1031 cash transaction purchase to a death, to transferring a 1031 over to John, because there's tax implications with all this, and finally getting the deal closed. Only a few weeks delayed, but thank goodness we know some good attorneys. We know 1031 people. We were able to coordinate with the listing agent. They were great to work with on this deal as well. And the seller, at first she wasn't in a rush, but now she was. So we were able to make this all work out. And it was one of the more interesting, crazy deals we had to deal with the 1031 and a death. So we got this whole segment, deal breakdown. Every time we close a deal, we're going to break it down. Some are going to be very interesting to deal with, like this one. So if you're 1031, can help you out. Other ones just might be normal transactions that go through, and hopefully they're all smooth. You never know, but there's always something that happens in a deal that causes a rumble. I tell my clients every single time, everything can go smooth until it doesn't. There's going to be an unknown lien, state tax, something's going on there, something doesn't get fixed. I've only had 2 transactions out of the hundreds of transactions I've done. I've only had 2 transactions in my entire career so far that have gone perfectly smooth, closed early, no issues at all. There's always something with the lending side, the title side, or something with the buyer seller loan. So follow along, we're going to be doing more of these deal breakdowns throughout the year. If you're looking to buy or sell in the Dayton, Northern Cincinnati area, make sure you reach out to us, comment below in the video, or send us an email. We'd love to assist you with buying, selling, or investing here in the Dayton, Northern Cincinnati area.